From FLX1.com and presented by FL1 Radio, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. When Ontario County Sheriff Phil Pavro announced that he would not seek another term this November, it quickly created a hole in local law enforcement. This hour, we're joined by Bob Green, one of the three candidates vying to succeed the longtime sheriff. We're going to try and cover a lot of ground here in the next 30 minutes for our listeners, but first and foremost, Bob, thanks a lot for being here.
And thank you, Josh, for having me this morning.
So first easy question. Why are you running for sheriff? What's that inspiration?
Lifelong passion. From the day I started in there, I knew that I would aspire to that level, and the opportunity has presented itself. The current sheriff, as you know, has done an honorable job with the Sheriff's Department, and seeing that opportunity now that he is retiring, I certainly wish to pursue that avenue.
So obviously, going back some years, you've had a long, decorated career in law enforcement. What was it that made you say, law enforcement as a young man, this is what I want to do with my life?
Very good question, Josh. I go back to my younger years back in high school, and we had a local deputy in the town that I lived. And when he would go by, or once in a while he would stop to my father's farm and say hello, and I knew that was what I wanted to pursue with my life. And he was a gentleman that I looked up to. I looked up to the career, and I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Now, one of the big issue questions, obviously there are a lot of them, a lot of talk about school safety and how we keep our schools safe. Your general thoughts on how the best way to keep schools safe and how to continue to improve the relationships that police have with those in school?
As you know, we have a very vibrant SRO program, or School Resource Officer program. I am chairman of public safety. I serve on that, as well as our finance committee. And we've been able this last 2 years to put an SRO in every school in the county. For the sake of three of them, everybody is full-time, and we are currently working towards funding for the 3 part-time positions to make those into full-time positions. That being said, that SRO program is critical to the safety of that school. They build relationships in the school. You cannot quantify that, but we know it's there. Our SRO program and the officers that serve in it is a very strong program, and we will continue to build upon that with the relationships in the community as well as the parents. It's important that the SROs in their work in the schools are able to identify possible at-risk students and work with those students and seek avenues of safety for them, as well as it's a safety issue for the whole school. The administrators in the schools, by the Education Department law, must reevaluate any threats that they have on a yearly basis, and that's part of their protocol. It has been that for a number of years, particularly since Columbine. So they do reevaluate on an annual basis any problems and issues that may arise. They address them and bring that to the public in a forum called their school board, and working with the sheriff and the pertinent law enforcement agencies of that county or that jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those who might just be joining us, I really want to just remind our listeners, we have Bob Green. He's running for sheriff here in studio. What are sort of the benchmarks or the hallmarks of your campaign? What are the top 2 or 3 issues that you've really been focusing on as you are campaigning and talking to folks? I'm sure you're hearing a lot of compelling stories from people who just want to see law enforcement continue to move in the right direction, right?
Absolutely. I feel our Sheriff's Department, and I'm proud to have been part of that, part of the accreditation process over the years, building programs within the department, working with the Board of Supervisors. One of the top issues, and I think I speak freely for all of us that have come before you, is the opioid crisis. We have been very fortunate in our correctional facility offering programs to individuals that come into the jail. We don't want them to return to the jail. We want them to return to their families and to be part of society. And we have been I think we have been at the tip of the spear here. And we've had other counties look at what we do, helping inmates. But beyond that is out there on the streets, we've had a very strong effort collaboratively with other law enforcement agencies in trying to shut down the supply. Our law enforcement officers are very community-oriented individuals. I see our individuals involved with their fire departments, EMS agencies, their Rotaries, their Kiwanis, and in their school systems. And that is, again, something that you can't quantify, but it is so important for those community relationships to continue and to improve.
Now, as far as those relationships go, how important is it? You were talking about the school resource officer program. How important are those relationships and starting those relationships early when the students in elementary school, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, before they're at that 16, 17, 18-year-old range where maybe they're having their first interaction with law enforcement and it's not in the good way. What kind of benefit do you see from that early interaction?
As we know, the young people are very susceptible to influences, outside influences, and those SROs present a positive influence. Mm-hmm. That SRO program, also within the school system, they are an avenue or a venue, if you will, to the school administrators and the individual students. It's building trust. In the stories that I hear talking to our SRO program individuals, is that they do build that trust, and they are incredibly dedicated individuals. They spend time with the students, and so many times the tragic stories, once they begin to trust that SRO, conflict at home and drug abuse and addictions, that SRO takes on a personal note and tries to direct into a positive direction social agencies that can help them out.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we were talking a minute ago about the opioid epidemic. Huge problem. Do you think law enforcement is getting the right kind of support across the board to continue fighting this problem? Obviously, it isn't a problem that, as several people have said, can't arrest your way out of this problem. There has to be a whole broad approach to it, services included. What is your position on how to best tackle the opiate epidemic over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and do it in incremental steps so that it doesn't become an overwhelming burden on those who are attempting to serve?
The first incremental step is to shut down the supply. But secondly, we need to recognize that without a demand, the supply would dry up. And we need to directly entertain the notion that we have got to get out into our communities. And I think the Sheriff's Department, amongst other areas, Sheriff's Departments, have been very forward-thinking in working in the communities. And as I said, Kiwanis, Rotary, young people organizations. We have something called the DARE program, and that is still a program that has place in today's world. But it's not just the 4th and 5th graders. I think we need to reintroduce the program at the higher levels before they go out onto college campuses. And we can't be in everywheres on the college campuses. Mm-hmm. We know that. And that becomes an issue of personal responsibility and making the colleges aware, mm-hmm. And I'm sure they are, what's taking place within those campuses. But the influx of it and is just made it so easy for individuals to access, and we do have to shut down that supply. Fortunately, within the county, we have a very strong task force that works collaboratively with all the law enforcement agencies, the federal, state, county, and local agencies, and they do work, and they're out there doing the best they can, and they reintroduce themselves into society to try and work with those social agencies, churches, programs. I sit on the board of directors for the Partnership of Ontario County. That has been an extremely important avenue for us, and they are forward-thinking. They work, again, out in the community and in the schools. We also introduced something that was, again, forward-thinking, Veterans Court and Drug Court. Mm-hmm. And these are individuals, and I have been going to these for the last 3, 4, 5 years that they've been in place, and to sit there and listen to the stories that come from the heart of individuals that knew that they took the wrong pathway, but now they have been given a second chance. Judge Aronson has been doing an incredible job working with all the partners and stakeholders to bring that to a full circle. So I see those programs moving forward, and as a member of the State Sheriff's Association, and I'm a member of the National Sheriff's Association, seeking best practices. And I often use the example, Josh, let's say you and I have a critical disease of some sort. Mm-hmm. The treatment that works for you might not necessarily work for me. And that's why it's so important to be open-minded and look forward to what our other communities doing.
So obviously the opioid epidemic is just one of many different problems facing society. Building and ensuring the community relations. You've talked about the club. You talked about the different avenues that you can reach young people. What is the approach for just ensuring that the reputation that the Ontario County Sheriff's Office has established remains as solid as it is today and continues to improve down the line? Obviously, when you have a sheriff who carries a tenure of 20-some years, that makes a big difference. But obviously, that torch has to be carried moving forward. Why do you think, or what do you think you will be able to do to really continue that progress? Experience.
And I've been involved with it my whole career. Whether I've been on the Board of Supervisors, I did work for Homeland Security for 2 years, and I saw what other communities and other successful law enforcement officials have done in their careers to collect and communicate within their communities. Mm-hmm. I worked with the sheriff. I continue to work with him on his budgeting. I continue to work with him on a number of programs within the county, and I feel that I have the background to continue that, and we will look for improvements. Mm-hmm. See what other communities are doing. We don't have the answers, but I must don't have all the answers.
Right.
But I want to congratulate you for recognizing the work that man has done, and to fill those shoes is going to take a little time. We will do it, and if elected, I will step in and hit the ground running.
Now, one of the hallmarks that I've seen associated with your campaign is the management experience. How important is that aspect of it? Because obviously you're talking about a lot of different problems, a lot of big problems that span a lot of different areas and a lot of different agencies, but you still have the day-to-day operation that has to be executed. How important is that management experience, and how big a piece of the overall puzzle is that?
It's huge. The sheriff of a county is like the CEO of a Fortune 500. Mm-hmm. They bring in the tools necessary to keep the organization functioning, and you rely on your for your day-to-day operations from counsel from your administrative staff as well as your line officers, but you also take time to listen to union issues and listen to the line officers, the people that are in the trenches. I spent time in the trenches. I know what it is. I have touched every division within that agency. And now we have just passed through public safety the sheriff's budget for 2019. And whoever the next individual is that walks into that front office will work with that budget. And we will finalize that budget actually this week, coming up, full committee, and I anticipate that full budget of approximately $34.5 million will be passed. The Sheriff's Department is all-encompassing. The name Sheriff's Department is an umbrella in of itself. We have corrections, we have a 911 center which has state-of-the-art technology, and we are also changing that into what we call next generation technology. We have a civil division, of course, we have a correctional division, we have Office of Court Administration, and it is important that you're like the captain of the ship. You make sure that the rudder is straight and you move forward.
So I want to touch on that legislative and budget experience. How that is a different skill set, I guess, would be the best way to say it, than is what really necessary for the sheriff's office. But at the same time, is a huge tool that you have at your disposal with that experience under your belt. Does that give you a confidence that you think some of the other candidates may just not have heading into the primary and then the general?
And thank you for recognizing that. Yes, it is. I've built relationships. It's called networking. It's very important to maintain that networking with your board of supervisors, with your county administrator, all the department and division heads within the county, mental health, public health, DSS. These are all part of that family we call Ontario County. The example that I give to you is the sheriff's budget underneath a bigger umbrella called Ontario County is we represent 18.5% of the overall budget. And we are also working with something called a tax cap, and it is very important to be able to justify any and all additional positions that we may bring into the department, new programs, and that is where those relationships become so important in development of those new programs within the department.
So let's shift gears a little bit. One of the things that we always see whenever we post a story about Ontario County here on FingerLakes1.com, we're always seeing people comment about the growth in the Farmington, Canandaigua, Victor, 332, 96 corridors there. Your take, and especially from the law enforcement perspective, because it seems like within 10 to 15 years, there could be a significant shift in terms of where the densest population is, or where the densest traffic population is. Your thoughts on how law enforcement will have to deal with that over that period of time, especially in the next 4 to 5 years as things continue to just grow and grow and grow?
We will have to do a regular review of where our individual patrols will need to take place. It's called data management or systems management, and it's a common tool that is used. And you feed into that system how many complaints, what your calls for service are, and you make those shifts. That also may mean bringing on additional personnel. And again, that is all part of that process of county budgeting. You have to be able to justify before that board of supervisors and the county chairman and the county administrator why the sheriff needs more personnel. And that's a skill set in of itself to be able to articulate those needs within the sheriff's department.
So obviously things have been changing over the last 10 to 15 years. We're now firmly into what is referred to always as the digital era. Your take on what the tech side of this modern world has done to policing and how you guys do your job on a daily basis?
How we communicate, Josh, has changed.
Yeah.
I'm often I find myself with my iPad and my iPhone sometimes struggling, especially when I have one of my children home. Hey, fix this for me, would you?
Yeah.
But I understand that. And it is changing rapidly. You see it here in your studio, do you not?
Yeah.
On a regular basis. I've alluded to the next generation 911. We just finished in the 911 center a significant upgrade of all the instruments and technology within that. As soon as it's in place, we're now looking for another step and another upgrade. Mm-hmm. I served on the New York State Committee for Save 911. And that directly affected the amount of revenue that is returned from New York State. As you know, on your cell phone bill every month, you see a surcharge.
Many of them.
Yeah.
Many of them.
That is not all returned to us,
right.
The individual counties. And that's been a sticking point. I have been working with New York State Association of Counties, called NYSAC. I've been past president of the Inter-County Association of New York. The Sheriff's Association have all worked on trying to increase that funding from New York State. We've been partially successful. Mm-hmm. But as New York State pulls that surcharge off your cell phone bill and my cell phone bill, it goes into something called the general fund. That's not where it was meant to go. It was meant to come back to the counties. Mm-hmm. Now, we did receive, and it just came through my committee, $196,000 for an upgrade. That's an annual grant that comes into place, and that will be for personnel and the equipment. I also want to touch on, we went to 700 megahertz on our radio system, and we just did an upgrade for the fire departments. It encompasses all the first responder community, and we put up a new radio tower in the town of Phelps for the 700 megahertz. We've helped the 2 police departments, and both large police agencies, Geneva PD and Canada PD, are now dispatched to our 911 center. We're in the process of receiving $600,000 back from New York State to upgrade a microwave dish at 74 Ontario Street, which will assist the Canandaigua Police Department as well as the community college.
Very nice. So obviously, sticking with the digital topic here, your thoughts on seeing platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat used by local law enforcement agencies to help do their job and help catch bad people and move through that process. A little taken back by that, or do you see that and say, oh, that's how it should be used, that for good in that way?
For good.
Yeah.
And that's the future.
Yeah.
At the danger of repeating myself here, that's how we communicate. Yeah. And law enforcement better be in touch with that, and needs to be in touch with that form of communication. How many times have we seen in some of the tragic incidents here in this country that somebody communicated on a form of social media their intent? If we can intercede on that, we stop a tragedy.
Now, last question for you before we get you out of here and on your way. Where can people connect with you? I believe you have a website. I think you're on Facebook as well. Tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can get in touch with you to talk about some of those issues that are important to them.
Absolutely. BobGreenForSheriff.com is my website, and BobGreenForSheriff@gmail.com. And be more than happy to try and answer those questions. I am flooded, so if I don't get right back to you, it's a matter of just categorizing and those questions that come to me. But I do try to get back to everybody in a very timely fashion.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time today, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again. Best of luck in the primary in a couple weeks.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
That is going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Bob, our listeners, and of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this program possible. Keep listening, and until next time, stay tuned to FingerLakes1.com for the latest news, weather, sports, and more.